This video is intended to provide a description for replacing the engine harness air control valve, or ACV, connector. To perform this repair, you will need the following tools and equipment: the engine harness ACV connector replacement kit, a razor blade, tape measure, permanent marker, wire cutter, wire stripper, crimping tool, heat gun, and electrical tape. To begin the repair, start by using a razor blade to cut the electrical tape at the end of the wire loom covering the engine harness behind the ACV connector. Peel the wire loom away from the harness to expose about 10 inches of wire. Use a tape measure and permanent marker to mark each of the engine harness ACV wires 1/2 inch from the back side of the ACV connector. Next, use a pair of wire cutters to cut all 10 ACV wires at the 1/2 inch mark behind the engine harness ACV connector. Note: the wire numbers on the engine harness correspond directly with the labeled wires on the ACV connector replacement kit. However, depending on the production date of the vehicle in service, a variety of engine harness wire colors may be found. For vehicles with harness number 3008067C91, all of the wires will be colored purple. For vehicles with harness number 3008067C92, refer to the wire color cross-reference chart. Identify the 3 wires leading to pins 3, 4, and 5 on the engine harness ACV connector. These wires are unused and will not be spliced into the new ACV connector pigtail. Now mark the 326 wire to pin 6, the 389 wire to pin 7, and the 352 wire to pin 8, 1 inch from their initial cuts. Cut the 326 wire, the 389 wire, and the 352 wire at their respective 1 inch markings. Next, mark the 361 wire to pin 9 and the 320 wire to pin 10, 2 inches from their initial cuts. Cut the 361 wire and the 320 wire at their respective 2 inch markings. Using a wire stripping tool, strip 1/4 inch of the wire insulation from the end of each of the 7 exposed engine harness ACV wires. Individually twist each of the exposed wires until the wire is wound in a helix. Next, place a 2 inch long piece of heat shrink tubing over the 354 wire to pin 1 on the engine harness. Insert the exposed end of the 354 wire of the engine harness into the 354 wire crimp connector of the new ACV connector pigtail. With the exposed wire inside the crimp connector, use a crimping tool to firmly clamp the crimp connector to the exposed wire end. Repeat this process by connecting each of the wires on the engine harness to the corresponding wires on the new ACV connector pigtail. Using a soldering gun, solder each of the 7 wires at their exposed crimp connections. Let the soldered connections cool and then pull the heat shrink tubing over a crimped wire connector. Make sure to cover the entire exposed area of the connection. With the heat shrink tubing in place over the exposed connection, use a heat gun to shrink the tubing and create a protective insulation over the soldered connection. Repeat this process to insulate each of the exposed crimp connections. Now, locate the 3 unused wires and install heat shrink tubing over the ends of each of these wires to isolate them from the rest of the harness. Trim any excess plastic wire loom from the engine harness. Next, install the new wire loom. Fold the ends of the loom over to protect them from fraying, and place the loom over the insulated area of the newly connected wires. Secure each end of the loom to the harness using electrical tape. Reconnect the air control valve. Position the harness in the factory location and secure it using zip ties. Trim the excess length from the end of the zip ties. Ensure the red locking tab on the connector is fully seated. Finally, verify proper operation of the vehicle before returning it to service. This completes the engine harness ACV connector replacement.